We're back. I couldn't be more pleased to say, joined by a personal hero of mine, a man I've been privileged to call a friend as well as a comrade in arms, albeit after he took off the uniform of the United States, which he wore with great distinction for over 30 years. Truly one of our most storied military officers and heroes in this war for the free world. He is Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, United States Army retired, a special operator at all kinds of levels with deep knowledge as well and personal experience in the U.S. intelligence community. He retired from the Defense Department as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence under George W. Bush. He's an author as well as a contributor in many other respects to the Commonweal, notably, most recently, of The Coalition, a novel. General Boykin, welcome back. It's always great to have you with us, sir.
Thanks, Frank. It's delightful to be with you.
I just had the privilege of talking a little bit with Senator Mike Rounds, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, fresh from a hearing in which General Dempsey put in an appearance on this. Well, I call it the Obama bomb deal, General Boykin, and we were discussing the almost complete absence, it appears, of military inputs into these negotiations with one of our most dangerous enemies. What do you make of that, given your time in the Pentagon and, of course, in uniform?
You know, on the night of 24th of April, 1980, Frank, I watched 8 very good Americans, very brave Americans die about 100 miles from Tehran as they were attempting to rescue 52 Americans that were being held by the Iranian government, really, followers of the Ayatollah Khomeini. The military has been keeping a very close eye on Iran. The military knows that Iran has been a major lethal force in Afghanistan as well as Iraq. The military has a totally different perspective of Iran and this deal than does the administration, particularly John Kerry and Barack Obama's.
We're visiting with Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, a man who is not only a veteran and survivor of Desert One, the effort to free the hostages during the Carter administration that sadly failed, but many other exploits and heroic efforts on the part of the United States government to protect all of us. We're talking with him about the Iran Obama bomb deal, as I call it. And General Boykin, you were just making the point that the attitude, the informed understanding of the United States military about Iran, what it's up to, what it represents in terms of a threat to us, is very different than the attitude of, well, President Obama, Secretary of State Kerry, and others. Talk a little bit more about that, if you would.
Yeah, the people within the military have been watching the Iranians certainly ever since the failed rescue attempt of the 52 Americans being held in the U.S. Embassy in 1980. They've been watching the Iranians very closely, and there are several things that the military is very aware of. One is that the Iranians have never kept any kind of agreement. The Iranians have never been one that could be negotiated with, simply because they operate under the concept of taqiyya, which is a theological concept of being willing to lie for the faith, being willing to break treaties as a routine matter of supporting the faith and the furtherance of that faith.
It's actually obligatory, not just permissible. It's a requirement of Sharia, as I understand it.
That's right. And so the military is very suspect of the Iranians. The military also has been watching what the Iranians were doing in Iraq and Afghanistan in terms of the EFP, explosively formed penetrators, which have killed and maimed and wounded many. Biggest killer on the battlefield, quite frankly. And they've watched the Quds Force, and they are not excited about entering into a treaty that is ultimately going to result in and promote and allow the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon, because their attitude towards the Iranians is that they can't be trusted, that their ultimate objective is to dominate certainly the Middle East and probably the globe, for that matter, from a theological perspective. So the military is not enthusiastic about this.
And pragmatism, I guess, is the most charitable word that could be used to describe their feeling that this is going to happen, and they're just going to have to go along with it. General, again, I mentioned you served, among other roles in the U.S. government intelligence community, as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. And I just want to ask you, we've had now 2 Secretaries of State, one who has apparently completely ignored all sensible, let alone legal requirements regarding the use of private servers for handling official emails. And her successor, John Kerry, the man who has negotiated this deal, who we now learn is involved through the marriage of his daughter with Iranians, some of whom live in this country, but some of whom have family in Iran. And again, just as an intelligence professional, General, would you characterize these two incidents or episodes or conducts for us from the point of view of the vulnerability that they entail for our country in terms of intelligence and our security?
Well, let's add into this equation that you just outlined, Huma Abedin, Secretary Clinton's primary aide, who was the daughter of both a mother and a father, as well as the sister of a brother that had all been involved with the Muslim Brotherhood. So add that into the equation, and you have to ask yourself, how could a guy like John Kerry, with that kind of connections to Iran through marriage, actually be credible in terms of dealing with the Iranians? Now, that's just on this issue. The other issue, though, is, really look at the background of John Kerry and ask yourself, is this guy really the guy that should be negotiating anything that deals with American national security or America's future, given his abysmal track record? Now, some will say, well, we've already dealt with that. He's been elected by the people of Massachusetts. Yeah, but this is not about Massachusetts. It's about America, and I think that there has to be consideration for that.
Yeah, look, my feeling is that the guy should be impeached, really, for the conduct that he's engaged in this deal. It, as you say, it fits a pattern of betrayal of our country going back to his time as a veteran of the Vietnam War, but it's now reached a level where the dangers are so immense to all of us, not just the people of Massachusetts, as you say. General, in closing, just a quick question. I know as a senior and highly respected military officer, you have been very critical of the sort of social engineering that's been going on in the Pentagon and the military more generally under the Obama administration. Could you talk specifically about the implications for the military, the good order and discipline of the military, of having, as the administration has now done, this idea that they should admit and allow to serve transgender individuals?
Yeah, sure. First of all, there is no constitutional right to serve in the military. Remember that, first and foremost. It is a privilege to be able to serve. Secondly, what does allowing transgenders to serve in the military do to contribute to readiness? The answer is absolutely nothing. Every decision made at this critical point in our history and in our military must be made with a view towards supporting the enhanced readiness of our military. None of these social experiments, to include serving transgender serve, has done anything to enhance our military. It's been done under a false narrative, a false concept of fairness, and the reality is there is no constitutional right to serve. It is all about defending America, fighting and winning our nation's wars. And if these decisions can't contribute to that in a positive, identifiable way, then they should not be made, and that's where I stand on this issue.
Yeah. And unfortunately, as you know so well, this isn't just a question of it being on net neutral. If it doesn't help, that's bad enough, but if it actually harms readiness, as I fear lots of this stuff, whether it's gays in the military or whether it's the impact of women in combat, to say nothing of this transgender stuff, it is a net very, very harmful, and it seems to me, General Boykin, part of the wrecking operation of this administration against our perhaps most important institution, our United States military. Thank you very much for joining us and for the great work you do as the Executive Vice President of an indispensable organization, the Family Research Council. Keep it up and come back to us again very soon. Next up, Congressman John Shimkus joins us. We'll talk to him about the vulnerability of our electric grid, what needs to be done about it. Straight ahead.